The 2024 Major League Baseball season has come and gone, and I thought it would be fun to do a recap and give every single team in baseball a grade. We're going to go division by division, record by record, so obviously we're going to start with the NL West and the Dodgers. They're getting an A++. Despite the fact that their starting rotation was completely ravaged by injury, I'm talking about no Kershaw, no Glasnow, no Ohtani, no Gavin Stone, River Ryan, I think that's his name. There were so many injuries, I'm probably forgetting a few, but the fact that they went 30+ games over 500, they have the MVP in Ohtani, they won the World Series with their World Series MVP, Freddie Freeman, when he was on one leg, you gotta give them an A++. And spare me with the they bought a championship. There are other billionaire owners in baseball that don't spend money. The San Diego Padres are getting an A for me, not an A+, not an A-, a solid A. And I think that we can all agree that the Dodgers and Padres matchup was the World Series. Fernando Tatis Jr. played like an all-star. Manny Machado was fantastic down the stretch. They got a near MVP level performance from a rookie, Jackson Merrill. Maybe I'm being a little bit dramatic. I just like Jackson Merrill a lot. But when you have a top 5 offense in baseball with Dylan Cease, Michael King, all on the same team a year after you traded Juan Soto, that's pretty solid. If you're a Dodgers or Padres fan, I'm praying for you because the next few years are going to be really stressful. Those teams are going to battle out every playoffs. Coming up next, we have the Arizona Diamondbacks, and despite the fact that they finished 16 games over 500, I'm going to give them a B. Ketel Marte played like an MVP. Jock Peterson was probably the best platoon bat in all of Major League Baseball. Corbin Carroll, he was a top 5 outfielder in the second half. But when you go from making the World Series to not even making the playoffs, I do have to hold you guys accountable. I know there were some injuries and some regression in that starting rotation, but a B, it's not too bad. And honestly, I think the first move to get back to an A grade, get rid of Jordan Montgomery. The vibes are awful. The San Francisco Giants are a little bit weird because when you look at their team on paper, they actually had some pretty solid performances across the board. Blake Snell had a few rough starts to begin his tenure with the Giants, but after that, he looked like Blake Snell all over again. They got breakout performances from young guys like Elliot Ramos, Ryan Fitzgerald, and Matt Chapman. He played like an MVP. I'm going to give the Giants a C+ because I actually thought on paper they were going to be flying under the radar with a Jung-Hoo Lee. Obviously, he got hurt, but I did not think that the Giants were going to finish under 500. Maybe C+ is too generous. Maybe it's not harsh enough. Even after they replaced their closer, Camilo Doval, with a Ryan Walker, that dude's a cheat code. He was basically the second best closer in baseball in the second half after Emmanuel Clase. I know it's the NL West, but when you finish 80 and 82, I can't give you a B. I'm going C+. I'm going to try and be as positive as I can about the Rockies, despite the fact that, yes, I am giving your team an F. Now, the fan base gets an A+++, because every single time I turn on a Rockies game, even if it's Rockies Nationals and you're out of first place by 50 games, the place is packed. Ezequiel Tovar is going to be a perennial all-star. I really liked what Michael Toglia did in the second half. If you guys didn't know, Michael Toglia was one of the better power hitters to end the season. Ryan McMahon and Brenton Doyle are power and defense wizards, so you have a lot of pieces in place to be good, but without the pitching, I mean, it doesn't really go hand in hand. Pitching in Coors Field, it's never going to work. So because they yet again could not get the pitching right, they're getting a straight F from me. I'm not even going to bring up their record. I feel bad at that point, but Rockies fans, keep it up. You're really supporting your team. I don't know how much you have left in you, but 2 thumbs up. From the NL West to the AL West, it might not be fair to judge the Astros solely on the playoffs, but they're the Astros. We have to judge them on October. Now, to their credit, the Astros were one of those teams that had to overcome injury after injury to that starting rotation. I'm talking about Lance McCullers, Christian Javier, Jose Urquidy, Justin Verlander. I mean, he was basically a shell of himself. But you do have to keep in mind the AL West was kind of the new AL Central this past season. It wasn't very good all the way across the board, and that's why the Astros were able to go 88 and 73. But again, they're the Astros. We judge them based off how far they go in the playoffs, almost similar to the Yankees. So I'm going to give the Astros a B-. Maybe I'm being a little bit too generous, but they did overcome a significant amount of injuries / regression. I'm going to go B-. I feel like that's fair. Maybe a C+. What would you guys give the Astros? The only reason why the Mariners are not getting a D letter grade is because of that starting rotation. Logan Gilbert, Luis Castillo, George Kirby, Brian Wu. I'm forgetting someone. There's 5 of them. How could I forget Bryce Miller? I'm sorry, Bryce, if you're watching. You're not. Yet again, Julio Rodriguez J-Rod was a complete no-show in the first half. As the season got better, yes, he got better, but it was too little too late. Jorge Polanco and Mitch Garver, pretty much the exact same story. Production came way too late in the season when the Astros essentially clinched the division and other teams in the AL clinched the wild card. I just expected more from Seattle. I truly thought that they were going to be a playoff contender, and they didn't even make the playoffs. It was close, but because of that, they're getting a C-. The Texas Rangers, our 2023 World Series champions, what am I going to give them? I'm really struggling between a C and a D, like a D+. The D+ comes from the context that the Rangers were also one of those teams that got completely destroyed by injuries. I mean, at one point you had Josh Young on the shelf. You have Jacob deGrom, Max Scherzer. They lost a lot of solid pieces. On the other hand, you have guys like Josh Smith. He just won a Silver Slugger at the utility spot. He was kind of like the shining light in that offense, aside from Corey Seager, who had a down season, but even a down season for Seager is still elite. Other guys, Marcus Semien wasn't as good offensively. Wyatt Langford, he missed some time with injury, but I mean, towards the end of the season, he was probably the best rookie in baseball. Kirby Yates was also one of the best relievers in baseball at the ripe age of 37, 38 years old, so I know the Class A trade kind of hurts, but over the last few years, honestly, the Rangers have had some pretty good closers. Maybe I'm going to be too harsh with this grade. I'm giving them a D+, because when you go from winning the World Series to not making the playoffs, again, just like the Diamondbacks, I have to hold you accountable. I just feel like the Diamondbacks had a little bit better luck in terms of staying healthy, and that has to count for something. But again, if I was a little bit too harsh, let me know, because it's about to get spicy. F-, minus, 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 to the second power to Avogadro's number, F- bajillion. One good thing I'll say about the Angels is that they're slowly but surely building a pretty solid power lineup. They were one of the few teams in baseball that had 5 or 6 guys with 20+ home runs. Even Joe Adell was in that club. Factor in a Mike Trout and a new addition in Jorge Soler, they could lead Major League Baseball with guys who hit 20+ home runs in 2025, and maybe Anthony Rendon bounces back. I have no idea. Everyone in their lineup could hit 20+. The starting rotation was absolutely buns. Everyone not named Jose Soriano and Tyler Anderson took a step back. Now you're thinking, well, those are 2 solid starters. Everyone else was pathetic. And yeah, they hit a lot of home runs as an offense, but that was kind of it. Their on-base skills are pathetic as well. Their OPS suffered because of that. I think they had the 3rd or 4th worst OPS in all of Major League Baseball. F-. I'm just begging that the baseball gods allow this team to stay healthy for one single season, especially Mike Trout. What happens in 2025 if they do? Because I will say, Zach Neto is going to be a perennial star. You have a young and up-and-coming, maybe superstar in the making in Christian Moore. They have some pieces in place. Just get some pitching. That's 2025, though. We'll talk about that in a different video. You all might be surprised by my grade for the Athletics. I can't even call them well, they were Oakland in 2024. The Oakland Athletics. I'm going to call them that for this video. I'll be giving them a C+ because we had some I am saying monster performances from guys like Brent Rooker and Lawrence Butler. Mason Miller was the Terminator as their closer as well, so they have some fantastic pieces to build around. It's just that John Fisher is still the owner of the club, so I have to factor that into the equation as well. A squared plus B squared equals John Fisher owns the team, you get a C. Yeah, we're going to stick with the C-. The A's get a C-. I like a lot of their offensive players. Their pitching, their starting pitching, that is, has some work to do. Maybe they spend money in Sacramento because they don't have to pay as many staffers. Maybe that happens. The West Division is done. Let's go to the East Divisions. We're going to start off with the Phillies, and straight up, I'm giving them a B-. They deserve a lot of credit for what they did in the regular season, 95 and 67. Bryce Harper was a stud again. We also saw Kyle Schwarber set the leadoff record for most home runs by a leadoff hitter in baseball history. The rotation did Philly rotation things. I mean, you go back to a Cole Hamels, Cliff Lee, I can't remember, Roy Halladay. How could I forget Doc? The Phillies just do starting pitching right, and their offense was just as good. But when it came to the playoffs, I don't know what happened. They didn't show up. In spurts, they did. Yeah, I'll give them that. But in terms of their playoff performance, it was kind of sad to watch. The daycare didn't really show up, and that hurts me because you guys know I'm a big Bryson Stott fan. I really like Brandon Marsh and Alec Boehm, but those guys did not show up in October, and I hate saying that. Regular season gets a thumbs up from me. October gets a thumbs down. I feel like a B- is fair. Maybe a C+. What would you give the Phillies? If you told me the Braves would lose both Spencer Strider and Ronald Acuna Jr. within the first 2 months of the season, I don't know if I would say the Braves would have been cooked, but they actually had a pretty decent season despite all of that. Also, apparently, despite is the word of the day. I'm going to stop saying that. They ended their season winning 7 of their final 10 games. They went 89-73. Spencer Schwellenbach was an absolute star as a rookie. I haven't even thrown in the fact that Austin Riley was not himself. Matt Olson regressed as well. Sean Murphy, same exact thing. The fact that they finished 16 games over 500 almost doesn't make sense to me, but that's in large part because we got to tip our cap to Raisel Iglesias. He was basically an automatic win if he came in. Chris Sale, Ronaldo Lopez. I feel like they did a lot of good things without some of their megastars, and yeah, they lost in that doubleheader, but the Mets, they were God's team this year. So I don't know if I've said it, but the Braves, they're getting a B from me. We just brought them up. Again, we're going by division and record. The New York Mets, I'm going to give them an A. I can't give them an A+ because I'm reserving that for a few teams. You'll understand, maybe they deserve an A+ because spoiler, my team, the Guardians, they might be in the A+ conversation. We'll get there in just a second. The Mets, yeah, they're going to get an A. Sean Manaea became Chris Sale after he saw Chris Sale throwing sidearm, and he said, I'm going to do that too. That Pete Alonso home run is still just crazy to me what he did off of Devin Williams. They made it as far as they could possibly go. And the reason why they're getting an A, despite the fact that they didn't even make the World Series, this was supposed to be a bridge year. They traded away Scherzer and Verlander for some prospects who were supposed to help out in 2025, 2026. Well, Luis Angel Acuna, he filled in pretty well for Lindor when Lindor had, I can't remember what injury he had. Are they a Cinderella story and horrible on paper? No, on paper, they're fantastic. They spend a lot of money, but again, this was supposed to be a bridge year, and they overperformed, in my opinion. They get an A. I really wish that CJ Abrams did not kind of taint the 2024 season for the Nationals because a lot of things went well for them. James Wood showed off his 6'6", 6'7" frame by hitting almost every home run the other way. Dylan Cruz, he showed a lot of promise in his short stint. Again, CJ Abrams was a flat-out dog before he got caught in a casino at like 4 or 5 a.m. when he had a day game. I have a lot of faith in Mackenzie Gore. Mitchell Parker showed some progress as well. It's just when you go 71 and 91, I can't give you an A. Also, how could I forget the breakout season from Luis Garcia Jr.? That is big for the team going forward. Jacob Young is an absolute vacuum in center field. If he can't get to a ball, no one can. Overall, I feel like a C- is fair. Shout out to DJ Hertz as well, one of the better strikeout guys in baseball for a rookie starting pitcher. Just when you go 20 games under 500, that's the grade you're going to get, a C-. I know technically this is the Florida Marlins, but I'm not a big fan of the Miami Marlins symbol, so we're just going to say the Marlins. In terms of positives, I do believe that the Jazz Chisholm trade is going to pay dividends in the future. There were some other trades that happened as well. The Tanner Scott trade could be pretty good in the long run as well. The shining spots were Otto Lopez down the stretch. Xavier Edwards, I mean, he basically replaced Luis Horizon, might have even been better. But how much were we really expecting from the Marlins considering Sandy Alcantara was gone? You had injuries to Edward Cabrera and other guys like Jesus Lazardo, Ryan Weathers. There was just so many injuries. Like they could have filled up an entire rotation of guys who couldn't play. I'll give the Marlins a D+ despite, I can't say despite again. Even though they finished 38 games under 500, I do have to be aware of the fact that they were never going to be good. They had a lot of injuries, and they made some good trades. That's where the plus comes in. But this is going to be fun. This is going to be good. The Yankees made the World Series. They have the MVP in Aaron Judge. They have maybe the runner-up MVP, Juan Soto. It's probably going to be Bobby Wood Jr. We'll talk about the Royals in a moment. What grade are they going to get? Rookies like Luis Gil and Austin Wells put the teams on their back while certain guys were out with injury. They're not getting an A because they did not fix the glaring issues that plagued their team the entire regular season, and they showed up big time in October. I'm talking about base running issues and defense, essentially unplugging your brain from the outlet when it matters the most. They did so many things right though, so it feels weird not giving them an A, but if you ask any Yankees fan, they might think I'm being too generous. They might give them a C+ or maybe even a D because again, the issues that were present all year long, they just kind of wiped their hands clean of them and hoped that they would just go away in the playoffs? Yeah, that didn't happen. So I'm curious what you all think. Am I being too generous or not harsh enough? What are we going to do with the Orioles? What are we going to do? B-? Nope. I'm not going to put them in the same letter as the Yankees. Yes, the Orioles dealt with a lot of injuries. Felix Bautista wasn't even on the team. Dean Kremer, John Means, freaking Kyle Bradish. But come on now, let's not ignore the fact that you had a juggernaut offense that yet again just completely vanished in October. I feel like there's not really much else to say about the Orioles. Gunnar Henderson played like an MVP. Adley, I mean, as the season aged, he got worse and worse. You had breakout performances from a Jordan Westburg. Cedric Mullins finally looked like Cedric Mullins again. Anthony Santander, he had the most home runs by a switch hitter since Lance Berkman. Lance Berkman! Actually, I feel like a C+ is pretty fair. They should have advanced. That's fair. The Boston Red Sox, along with the Tigers, we'll talk about the Tigers in a moment, are going to be one of the few teams that I'm going to give 2 grades. One for the first half and one for the second half. The first half, Boston Red Sox get an A from me. The second half, not so much, but staying with the first half, Andrew Bailey turned Tanner Houck, Cutter Crawford, and some other guys into Cy Young caliber pitchers. Maybe not so much with Brian Bayo, but again, Houck and Crawford, they were some of the best pitchers in baseball in the first half, or at least Crawford for the first month and a half, 2 months. And even without Trevor Story and Tristan Casas, Jarren Duran was playing like a megastar once he introduced that leg kick. Willie Abreu, he's not going to win Rookie of the Year, but he played like one. But that's where the second half comes in. Not only did the starting rotation start to regress and look like the pitchers that we saw in previous years, but the bullpen added insult to injury. The bullpen was horrific all year long. So if I give them an A for the first half and a C- for the second half, does that average out to a B- for the full year or a C+? I'm going to go B-. They were 81 and 81, a dead even 500 and a stacked AL East, so they kind of suffered the same fate as the Diamondbacks. Well, the Diamondbacks were a whole lot better, but if you didn't win 95 games, you weren't going to make the playoffs. I'm looking at my script right now. Did I really give the Blue Jays an F? Hold on, I got to look at the standings again. Why did I give them an F when I was making this? Okay, now I can see why. They went 74 and 88, and they were outscored by 72 runs. That's awful. And the weird part about the Jays being so bad is that Vladimir Guerrero Jr. was really good all over again. I mean, he basically had his best season since he lost MVP to Shohei Ohtani, which, by the way, is one of the best compliments you can ever give to a player. The only human who could beat you in your prime was Ohtani. That's crazy. They were 17th in scoring as an offense and 22nd in terms of team ERA. So across the board, they were below average. When you bring in a Yariel Rodriguez and a few other players, you're expecting the Blue Jays to compete with the Yankees and the Orioles. They didn't do any of that. I'm giving them an F. Honestly, I feel like there's not much to talk about in regards to the Rays. They were in no shape or form a competitive team this year. They had a lot of players regress, like Yandy Diaz, who, to his credit, did look better, along with Josh Lowe as the season aged. Drew Rasmussen came back to the bullpen, and he's going to be a starter next year, so that's cool. Jeffrey Springs, before he kind of rehurt himself, he looked awesome as well. I mean, across the board, I would say the main theme was regression. You trade away Isaac Paredes, you trade away a Randy Arozarena, you weren't even the same team down the stretch. A D. The Luke Raley trade, that was bad as well. Richie Palacios, I mean, he's not horrific, but I'd rather have Luke Raley. That was bad. We've covered the West, we've covered the East. Now it's time for the Central. If you would have told me that the Brewers would make the playoffs, and not just make the playoffs, be first in their division without Freddie Peralta pitching like prime Freddie Peralta, he was good but not prime Freddie. There's no Brandon Woodruff. You have Corbin Burns off the squad. He's with the Orioles now, and you're still in first place without Christian Yelich in the second half? I'd say no way. It really just came down to one pitch that Pete Alonso got to go out because he's the polar bear. He's able to get baseballs to go out the other way that most humans can't seem to physically do, but you were 1 inning away with your star closer on the bump. That's pretty good. You didn't have Christian Yelich to end the year, and instead Garrett Mitchell gets inserted and he plays like prime Christian Yelich. William Contreras, Willie Adames, even the guy that they got in the Corbin Burns trade, why am I blanking on his name? Joey Ortiz, I mean, he's a rookie, and staying with rookies, Jackson Chourio from the beginning of June to the end of June, basically caught up to Jackson Merrill and Paul Skeens. He's going to be a top 3 Rookie of the Year guy. Bryce Terang was a stud on defense and stole 50-something bags, and Tobias Myers broke out. Trevor McGill, he was fantastic in replacement of Devin Williams while Devin was out. They did a lot of things right, and I'm going to do it. I'm going to give the Brewers an A-. Not an A, an A-. They did a lot of things that I just didn't think were gonna happen this year. I won't lie to you guys, I did struggle a lot with the Chicago Cubs grade. Right now on my script I have a C+, but also a B- feels fair too. I'm struggling, I'm not gonna lie. I want to give them a B because even though they didn't make the playoffs, they were still 83 and 79 and outscored their opponents by nearly 70 runs. That's really impressive. Seiya Suzuki was a star. They fixed Nate Pearson and Jorge Lopez. Those trades were immaculate. I mean, you can't not talk about Michael Busch if you're bringing up trades. Across the board, the Cubs, they did a lot of things right, aside from the Isaac Paredes trade, which has not looked great thus far, but he has a lot of time to prove that he's still good. Ian Happ won another Gold Glove and was great offensively. Pete Crow Armstrong, I mean, this dude might win 10 Platinum Gloves. Seriously, Dansby Swanson, he took a step back offensively, but he was still a rock star defensively. Seiya Suzuki had a 140 WRC plus with Shota Imanaga going to be in the Rookie of the Year discussions, not going to win. Justin Steele, Jamison Taillon bounced back. Honestly, it was just a bullpen. And even then, they made those trades for A. Pearson and a Lopez and some other guys. The Cubs, they're going to get a... What do I give them? I am making an executive decision. I will be giving the Cubs a B- because they did a lot of things right, despite the fact that Bellinger did regress. B-. It is not easy to outscore your opponents over a full season, let alone outscoring them by nearly 70 runs. Pretty impressive. They were in a decent division. The Cardinals finished ahead of them, I think. They did finish in front of them. And now it's time to talk about them. The Cardinals finished with the exact same 83-79 record as the Cubs, but the Cardinals were outscored. They didn't outscore. They were outscored by 50 runs. Arenado regressed. Eric Fedde was not a great trade. Kyle Gibson wasn't good either. How in the world did they finish 4 games above 500? I know the bullpen was a workhorse. Okay, I've just forgotten about guys like Mason Wynn, Brendan Donovan, Wilson Contreras, Alec Burleson. They all had pretty good years. Their bullpen was top 7 in all of Major League Baseball. Their offense wasn't the worst in baseball. Yeah, 100% the starting pitcher's fault, and we could have called that before the season because they just don't invest in starters. I know they got Sonny Gray, but they need more than that. You can't rely on 87-year-olds Kyle Gibson and Lance Lynn. I'm going to give them a C. Yeah, the Cardinals get a C from me. I thought the Pirates finished in 4th. Okay, I got to do a hat swap. I got to get the Reds hat. I had such high hopes for the 2024 Reds. Ellie De La Cruz, Matt McClain, some of my favorite young players in baseball. You bring in a Frankie Montas. He was awful. Their other rotational pieces, Hunter Green, Nick Martinez was kind of like a long reliever. You have Andrew Abbott, and also to end the year, Rhett Lauder was insane. Those guys were pretty good. It's just that when you have a 4.1 ERA as a bullpen, and then you're not going to get pretty much any production from Matt McClain because he misses the season, and Christian Encarnacion Strand does regress slightly. Not a great recipe for success, and also missing Jamier Candelario was a big-time hurt as well. I was happy to see Tyler Stevenson back in there. It's just a few guys took too many steps back, like a Jake Fraley, a Will Benson, some other guys that we could talk about, but we're not going to do that. The Reds, what did I give them? Whoa, I was harsh on them. I gave them an F. I don't think I was in my right mind when I was making this script, so I'm going to correct the Cincinnati Reds to a D+. All right, I'm going to do it. There were some very productive players. A C- for the Reds. I'm going to leave it there and move on. The Reds really just got a boost from an F on my script to a C- because when I talk about things out loud, I can rationalize a little bit better. It's different when you're just scripting. And according to my script, I gave the Pirates a C-, and I did give them some credit at the trade deadline. They traded for a few guys, and they actually wanted to compete. A lot of teams are saying, why are they doing that? It's kind of fool's gold. They're not that good. But they got that one guy. They got Paul Skeens. Paul Skeens started the All-Star game. He's in the Cy Young conversation right now because he literally was just named as a top 3 finalist, the first rookie to do that since Jose Fernandez. O'Neal Cruz is finally off of shortstop. Brian Reynolds, I mean, he was a really productive player offensively all over again. One day, Mitch Keller looks like a future ace, and then the next day, he looks like he should be in Double-A working on his mechanics because he's all over the place. At 76 and 86 and outscored by 74 runs, the Pirates, because they hit on Paul Skeens and he looks like he's going to be a future Hall of Famer, they got Brian Reynolds an extension. O'Neal Cruz is going to be pretty good in the outfield, in my opinion. And a tip of the cap, they got the most out of Joey Barr after he became a complete bust with the Giants. I'm going to give the Pirates a C- because of how well they hit with Paul Skeens and the other guys that they have in the rotation. I'll give the Pirates a C- because I like Paul Skeens that much and they at least tried at the deadline. But because of how bad Ke'Bryan Hayes has been, I almost want to give them an F. He bothers me. A+, I'm doing it. I don't care if you call me a fanboy or not. A+ for the Cleveland Guardians. You're telling me that the Guardians made it to the ALCS with a bottom-of-the-barrel payroll, and you did it essentially without Shane Bieber, Tristan McKenzie, Logan Allen was fantastic as a rookie last year, and Gavin Williams had a near 5 ERA. How did they do that? They somehow put the pieces of the puzzle together with guys like Matthew Boyd, Alex Cobb for a few spot starts, and a generational bullpen. They had multiple guys with either a low 2 or a sub 2 ERA. Clase, Tim Herron, not James Karinchak, he's gone now. Hunter Gaddis, Cade Smith, Pedro Avila started his Cleveland tenure in the worst way possible. He was terrible, and then he ended up being really good. Eli Morgan, fantastic as well. And we haven't even talked about Jose Ramirez. Josh Naylor was great in the regular season. I know October was different. I'm giving them an A+. I'm sorry, they're ahead of schedule. Just wait until the Guardians have Chase DeLauder and Juan Brito in the lineup, or if they spend some money on some offensive players. Whoa. Like, seriously, just do what the Royals did and spend $150 million across the board in one offseason. Just go do that. I'm very high on what the Royals did. I just think that their blueprint and their willingness to say, screw it, I know that we lost 100 games in 2023. We're going to go for it in 2024. We're going to call up Bobby Witt Jr., not send him down if he struggles. We're just going to trust in the process and then spend money on top of that. That makes me, even though I'm a Cleveland fan, excited for the future of baseball. Make every other team be inspired and willing to do that. I'm talking about cheap teams like the Marlins, the Brewers, the Rays, the Orioles. I don't know why I put the Marlins in that conversation, but yeah, they don't spend money. I'm talking about other talented teams that just don't invest on top of their farm system. They simply rely on scouting and developing these players, and oftentimes it just doesn't work. So if you can have a few hits in free agency on top of a scouting department, you end up with the Royals, who have a really good team in place for the future. Bobby Witt Jr., he was historically good. I don't know if he has anything left in the tank to get better than that, but if he can, I mean, that's a top 10 player ever. Vinny Pasquantino was an RBI machine. Seth Lugo was one of the better starters in the AL in the first half. Cole Reagans, Micah Walker were both fantastic, and they got a bounce back year from Brady Singer. Brady Singer. I don't know, maybe I'm an optimist, and that's my biggest flaw as a person. I just see the good in everything. I'm giving them an A-. I liked what the Royals did. The Guardians got an A+. I gave the Royals an A-. I'm going to give the Tigers an A++ for the second half of 2024. The first half of 2024, I'm going to give them like a D- to a D+. That was bad. But in the second half, they fully embraced pitching chaos. That is using Tarek Skubal as your ace. He's going to go 7-8 innings and throw 100 miles an hour in the 8th inning. And then when he's not pitching, you're either going Reese Olson for 4 or 5 innings and then bullpen guys for the rest of the game. Colt Keith was much better down the stretch. Parker Meadows, he was a rock star both defensively and in the box. Once he got recalled, there was a lot of good things that happened in Detroit. It just really seems like, I hate saying this, that getting rid of Akil Baddoo, he was kind of an automatic out, and Javier Baez, same thing. Once they got rid of a few automatic outs and they put in some young, fiery guys, the team completely flipped and they let the bullpen carry them to the promised land. And by promised land, we know that's just the wild card series for the Tigers. For the season though, screw it. Maybe I'm feeling jolly because the holidays are around. I'm giving the Tigers an A++. Who had them storming the castle, making a comeback for the ages, and even giving the Guardians a run for their money. That was one of the most entertaining series I've ever watched as a baseball fan. The exact opposite story can be said about the Twins. They had the literal 180 season of the Tigers. To end the year, they were pathetic. And I mean that. Twins fans will agree with me. Royce Lewis was great. Carlos Correa was great as well. The biggest bugaboo about the 2024 Twins was that starting rotation. Pablo Lopez stunk it up big time when it mattered the most. I'm talking about late September. Also, Bailey Ober, he fell off a cliff as well, and they didn't have Joe Ryan. Griffin Jax was a breakout superstar, but he had one bad little pitch to Kyle Manzardo, and that kind of started their skid to end the year. Willie Castro broke out. Carlos Santana won a Gold Glove at first base, his first Gold Glove. I think he's the oldest player ever to win their first Gold Glove. Simeon Woods Richardson kind of broke out before he fell off again. Just kind of seemed like their energy or will to win was zapped as the season aged, and I'm going to give the Minnesota Twins a D. And last but not least, I'm giving the Chicago White Sox an A+ because they hired my favorite player of all time, Grady Sizemore. Goodbye, the video's over. Okay, when you lose the most amount of games in baseball history, you got to get an F. Their team OPS, I can't even believe this is real, was 50 points lower than the Rays at second worst. The Rays had a 668 team OPS. The White Sox had a 618 OPS. They got on base 27% of the time, and if we take a look at their pitching, they were third worst with a team ERA of 4.67. Let's round up to 4.7, which again is 28th. That's third worst. The only really bright spot was Garrett Crochet. Luis Robert Jr. took a step back. Andrew Benintendi, I will say he took 10 steps back before he took those same 10 steps forward. He kind of saved his career out of nowhere. I'm going to give credit to Grady Sizemore. I think they had a talk and something clicked. Am I missing anything? Can I give them an F+? Eric Fetty, I mean, he had a 3.1 ERA before getting shipped out. No, that's it. The Chicago White Sox end the video with an F-. Let me know what you guys thought of this entire breakdown. Do you agree or disagree with any of my grades? I love feedback. I love seeing what you guys have to say. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Well, at least if you're a subscriber. So subscribe.